Part 72. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 720. Lu Feng didn't expect her to ask such a straightforward question. After thinking about it, he replied, "If you want to be rich in old age, it may be difficult, but the price can still be negotiated, as long as you are willing to help. I can quote you the price you want, but it must not be too low. $30 million is an unacceptable figure. The lowest price I can offer you is $50 million. Yue Karai." He took a sip of the coffee in front of him and said, "And I want $15 million. $15 million. Jin Tingting glanced at Lu Feng, but he only received more than $50 million in foreign exchange indicators, and the two figures added up to more than $65 million. You're part of the money, no problem." Lu Feng looked at her and said, "Can the price be lower? It's up to us to talk about it at the headquarters." "Well, how about $45 million? Lu Feng reported this price to leave a little leeway for later discussions. Their funds are really used by fingers, and there is no more than a cent. Generally, this kind of international acquisition has a relatively large price fluctuation. In order to successfully complete the acquisition, they are all serviced by financial companies and lend at any time." But Lu Feng didn't think United Capital would give him a loan at first. Even if it was a loan, he had to call Mr. Feng. In the end, it was Huang. So from the beginning, Lu Feng kept the price card dead. Karai hesitated, but when he thought of the huge profit of $15 million, he nodded and said, "No problem, but how do you give me this money? I want to ensure safety." "Don't worry, it's absolutely safe. These are our company's international lawyers and consultants. They are very professional in legal issues related to international funds," Lu Feng introduced. "Those few staff who have prepared contracts don't know when they became international lawyers. Anyway, what Mr. Lu said is what we are. Hello, the plan we have given is to transfer money to you through an international bank. You can open a personal account in a Swiss bank, and then we will transfer money directly to you to ensure that it will not be discovered. What about this money? After the acquisition is completed, the transfer payment will be made." A staff member took out the contract and said, "In order to ensure your interests, this contract will guarantee the certainty between us." Karai is not a fool, and immediately said, "This contract can't be written because I help you submit a low price, and the service fee." "Service charge?" Lu Feng smiled. In her eyes, it was considered a service fee, and it was obviously taking bribes. "Don't worry, I have considered it for you. In this contract, it is written about the import of raw materials. We need to approve the use of foreign exchange. The import of raw materials will be easier to approve," Lu Feng explained. "Is there a Japanese version?" Karai flipped through it and found that it was all in Chinese. "Here has." She looked carefully. "This contract will be the last shackle to protect her. After reading it carefully for more than half an hour, I signed it after confirming that it was correct." Lu Feng looked at the signature on it, signed his own name, and affixed the official seal of Jiafeng Electronics Group in front of her. The two shook hands, and Lu Feng said, "It's a pleasure to work together, and I hope you can do it as soon as possible." "Don't worry, I will compile a material report from Ruxin Laboratory and submit it tomorrow," Karai replied. "It's getting late, I'll take you down." The two of them talked and walked downstairs. When they got to the door, Lu Feng kindly brought it to the door of the car and helped her close the car door. "This car is really not suitable for you, but don't worry, after a while. Time to pick up a Porsche." When Yue Karai heard this, a smile appeared on her face. She bowed her head slightly towards Lu Feng and said, "Lord Lu Feng, it's too late, I'm causing you trouble." "It's all right, slow down on your way." Lu Feng beckoned to her and watched her leave. Kerala's broken sound wafted out the song. On the way back, Karai couldn't tell how good she was, so she couldn't help humming along, Thinking about the beautiful life after the funds arrived, the first thing she had to do the thing is divorce. She will never find a man who writes novels again in her life. Until he couldn't see her car, Lu Feng shrugged his shoulders slightly, took the contract over, flipped through it, and then pushed hard with both hands. Shoot! The contract was torn in half, then stacked, and torn in half again. Why did you tear up the contract? Jin Tingting asked in surprise. It's done, what do you want it to do? It's getting late, go back to sleep. Lu Feng turned around and walked back. Jin Tingting was both shocked and angry. He finally negotiated it, so he just tore it up. He was angry that he didn't abide by the contract. How to do? I want money. What kind of money do I want? Lu Feng said solemnly, I don't owe her any money. But she has a contract. She signed the contract for the money for imported raw materials. I didn't receive the goods. What kind of money should I give? Lu Feng asked rhetorically. Aren't you afraid she will expose it? Accepting a huge amount of bribes is a serious crime. Even if she doesn't receive the money, it counts. If she wants to go to jail, she can go and sue. Lu Feng reached out and pressed the elevator door opened, walked in, looked at Jin Tingting and said, there is no such thing in this world. Which country's contract guarantees illegal crimes? For this kind of thing, if you want to guarantee your current interests, unless you can create greater interests for me in the future, otherwise, you can buy and sell with one hammer. Jin Tingting stayed on the spot. For a while she didn't know what to say to refute. Get on the elevator, go back to sleep, Lu Feng greeted her. The next day, Karyui arrived at the company, and first called a few people under him for a meeting, and then began to formulate a valuation table for the R/U0026D company of Ruxin Laboratory, for the 374 patents of Ruxin Laboratory. The property rights were assessed and the patents were identified as non-core assets. In fact, from the perspective of the global R/U0026D process, the technologies in Ruxin Lab are indeed old antiques, which are equivalent to the 3G communication technology in our hands. They are completely eliminated. However, in many countries around the world, these technologies are patented. Still very important. Lu Feng woke up just after 9 o'clock in the morning. After a brief shower, he went to the restaurant to eat. Jin Tingting was so tired last night, so she went back to sleep and woke up this morning. She sat on the bed and recalled what Lu Feng did yesterday. Those things. She seemed to know this person again. In the restaurant, she casually tied her bald head, looking a little cute, sitting opposite Lu Feng, staring at the man. Why are you staring at me if you don't eat? Lu Feng asked while eating. I just think, you seemed very cruel yesterday, very bad. I treat everyone the same as I treat you. Gentle, harmless to humans and animals. Lu Feng raised his head and glanced at her, with a gentle smile on his face, and said, then how do you manage people, who will listen to you? What's more, the shopping mall is like a battlefield. She is just the person in charge of the second-level department, and she went to the headquarters to start a discussion, and those talents are the most difficult to deal with. Then you are so good to me, is it because of my dad? How is that possible? I just got along because I can chat with you. Really, I'm very kind when I see you. Lu Feng put down his chopsticks and said, you have such an affinity. Come out with me this time. The so-called supervision is just eating, drinking and drinking. Just travel with me, isn't it your turn, because of your dad? It's impossible, no one knows who my dad is, Jin Tingting said to herself. Lu Feng smiled without saying a word. Except for her, the whole world knew who her father was, otherwise such a good thing could fall on her head. After breakfast, Lu Feng called everyone to his room and had a brief meeting. Didn't I have contact with the headquarters before? I called them later and said that we are here and we can continue the interview. If they don't talk about our meeting with Karyui first, we won't mention it. Lu Fengchao. Everyone said, I think the price of the first round of interviews should be relatively high. Where is the assessment book prepared before? Don't worry, President Lu, they are all here. When the time comes, we need to suppress the technical level. Lu Feng said to Lu Chang, the more worthless you can say, the more worthless. In the first round, we will try to suppress the value of Ruxin Laboratory, as long as the round is down, and I have a way later. Although Lu Cheng didn't know what Lu Feng could do, he was extremely confident and nodded, don't worry, President Lu. You guys go call and try to meet in the afternoon. Lu Feng sat there and thought about it for a while, then said, I'll call over there and ask the law firm and accounting firm if they can find it. After 11 o'clock, Lu Feng called Su Yorong, only to be told that there was a meeting, and he didn't call back until 12 o'clock. Hey, Su Yorong sat on the chair and swayed back and forth. Half of the high heels on his feet had been taken off, and his feet seemed to be quite comfortable stepping on them, and said, You miss me. What happened before? Lu Feng asked. Apart from these, can't you talk about anything else? How is it over there? Su Yorong teased, are there any beauties in various uniforms to accompany you these 2 days? Hearing that she wanted to talk about this, Lu Feng rolled his eyes and said, Yes, uniform, exciting. What uniform do you like? Su Yorong asked curiously. The sanitation worker, isn't it exciting enough? Lu Feng said angrily, I'm so busy, can't you talk about something serious? You're so excited, isn't it? Su Yorong said angrily, how dare I neglect what you ordered? I've already found it, and I can send someone over at any time. Okay, let's go tomorrow. I have already settled the quotation. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 721. Is the progress going smoothly? Su Yorong asked. You should be careful with such a large investment. This is not a traditional industry. A few days ago, several shareholders of United Capital gathered for dinner and said when it comes to you, I can feel that they regret it a bit. Regret? It's too late, no one can take the money out of my pocket. Lu Feng leaned back, found a suitable posture, and said, so far, it's going well, if there are no problems, and went back in early January. Then I can come back for the new year. I plan to go home for the new year this year. Would you like to go back with me? Su Yorong was afraid that Lu Feng would think too much, and said, I just think that you just got divorced this year, and it is pitiful to go back alone for the new year. Come on, I haven't been back for several years, and my family thought I was missing. No need, Lu Feng refused. Su Yorong on the other end of the phone looked a little disappointed, but she didn't say much, just talked about the concerns of some United Capital shareholders, hoping that Lu Feng would be more stable next time. It is normal for them to worry. In terms of home appliances, although foreign technologies are advanced, they have little influence on inland areas. International home appliance manufacturers mainly supply developed countries. In recent years, the domestic market has grown rapidly, and a series of protective measures such as tariffs have made it impossible for them to enter the mainland market to compete with these companies. The country's tariff barriers are the protective barriers for companies, and what Lu Feng is doing now is to break through this layer of security barriers, go out and fight others, and also work in the high-tech field of communication. Don't worry about it being fake. Jiafeng Electronics is a big fish in this pool in China, but now what Lu Feng is doing is trying to enter the sea from the river, and being directly hammered to death is nothing new. Liukan and a group of people prepared relevant materials and called the office of the secretary of Ichiro Hirata, vice president of Roma Semiconductor Group. The two sides made an appointment to call after an hour. In the headquarters of the Rome Group, in the conference room, in the second meeting of the senior management on the current global market competition, Hirata Ichiro flipped through the folder in front of him. The overseas market department is under great competition pressure in the current foreign market, and the domestic competition is unprecedentedly large. It is imminent to expand market cooperation in some national markets. We still believe that the 4 Asian tigers are our first choice, and we will continue to increase in-depth cooperation with local companies and carry out in-depth bundling, a vice president in his 50s and 60s said firmly. I think the development prospects of the 4 tigers are still in the future. Not fully developed, the economy will continue to develop for decades. Everyone present agreed that from the mid-1980s to the present, after 10 years of high growth, these 4 places seem to have inexhaustible economic potential. They have become the 4 largest large-scale factories in Asia. Various products are sold all over the world. Hirata Ichiro had a different idea and said, I think we can pay more attention to the Chinese mainland. As far as I know, Motorola's pagers are selling very well there, and the GDP has grown rapidly in recent years. The chairman looked at him, and the others also looked at him, with a bit of joking on their faces. Mainland area? Hirata-kun, didn't you read the recently released per capita GDP data? Another vice president looked at him and said, the per capita GDP in mainland China in 1993 was $377, and Africa was ahead of her. Zambia. The people present couldn't help laughing. The mainland's per capita GDP is now lagging behind that of most African countries, and the per capita consumption capacity is very low. The chairman remembered something, looked at Ichiro Hirata and asked, didn't you tell me some time ago that there is a Huaxia company that wants to buy our laboratory? Yes, Hirata Ichiro nodded and said, we are currently in contact with an electronics group company in the mainland. They are very sincere. The Ruxin laboratory has been abandoned for several years, and related research and development has long been stagnant. Those technologies are useless to us. If the price is right, we can sell it. The chairman thought for a while and asked the crowd, what do you think? I don't agree, a tall, thin man said, these technologies are really of little use to us, but for them, they are advanced technologies, and according to international practice, they cannot be sold to China. The so-called international practice is actually a blockade of international high-end technology and technology led by the United States, including a series of regulations prohibiting the sale of precision machine tools, large gantry cranes, tunnel shield machines, military technology, and chemical technology. Below these, there is a series of unwritten international unspoken rules. All technical patents that can promote production shall not be transferred, especially the precision machine tool technology known as the mother of industry. Hirata Ichiro hesitated for a while, but still said, this is just some semiconductor technology in the early years, and it does not contain much. I don't think it involves the so-called ban on sales. Even if they get these technologies, what can they do? Make more pagers. We just had pagers from more than 10 years ago. Globally, it is very difficult to find a suitable buyer. After another 10 years, these technical patents are really outdated and worthless. At this critical time, it is very important for the group to be able to recover a little blood. Good thing. Besides, what year is this? It's 1994, not 1972. There was a bit of heated debate on the spot. The chairman pondered for a while, closed the folder in front of him, and said, today's meeting is here first. Regarding the Ruxin laboratory, I will trouble Hirata-kun. Hirata Ichiro stood up and bowed slightly, nodded and said, hi. Everyone walked out of the conference room. Hirata Ichiro had just walked out a few steps, and the vice president in charge of the business department, Watanabe, came over, looked at him and said, you seem to be very interested in selling Ruxin laboratory. I am the general person in charge of the group's overseas assets. I have my own assessment of these assets. The Ruxin laboratory is too old, and it needs to be sold. If you wait any longer, it will be a loss for the group, Ichiro Hirata said solemnly. Who is it not good to sell to? Why sell to him? We can sell to a company in the United States, Watanabe suggested. I want to sell it to them too, but they don't want it, Hirata Ichiro said angrily. Then give it to them as a gift, Watanabe frowned. If you can't do it, I still know a lot of people on Wall Street. Don't mention your experience on Wall Street, we all know that you have experience in the United States, don't interfere in my work. He glanced at Watanabe, turned his head and walked towards his office, whispering, Wall Street is the best loyal dog. Just after returning to the office, the secretary walked in and said, Mr. Minister, the person in charge of GFN Electronics Group is calling, and I hope to discuss with you about the Ruxin laboratory. I made an appointment in 3 minutes. Okay, call me now. Hirata Ichiro still wanted to move forward with this matter, because he felt that the chairman wanted to sell Ruxin laboratory in exchange for some funds. The secretary answered the phone and made some simple exchanges. Lu Feng was already sitting by the phone. Dear Lu Feng-sang, it's a pleasure to talk to you on the phone, Hirata Ichiro said politely. Hirata-kun, I'm also very happy to hear your voice. We have contacted you before, and we arrived yesterday. We are absolutely sincere about this acquisition, Lu Feng said into the phone. The translation girl, just sit aside. You have worked hard. We will eat dinner together today. I will treat you as a guest. At the same time, we are also very sincere. We will have a formal meeting tomorrow, Hirata Ichiro suggested. Okay, no problem, Lu Feng agreed. In order to fulfill the friendship of the landlords, I will send the company's car to pick you up. Hirata Ichiro really wants to sell, but such a large group is intricate and intertwined, and it is not easy to go smoothly. At 5 o'clock in the evening, 3 black Toyota cars were parked downstairs. Lu Feng and his group got into the car and went straight to the hotel. Songchuan Japanese cuisine store is a well-known local restaurant. It is said that it has been passed down for 3 generations. The people here are better at the spirit of artisan. Whatever the father does, the son does whatever. The son is also a mason. Such a social structure is destined to be depressing, and everyone is a little unwilling in their hearts. When you look at this society during the day, it is rigorous, gentle, and kind, and when you look at it at night, you will be unrestrained, and the surface and inner performance will be extremely torn. On the tatami, Lu Feng felt a little uncomfortable. The 3 people sitting opposite Ichiro Hirata looked at Lu Feng with disbelief. You are the chairman of GFN Electronics Group, he asked in surprise. Yes, I'm Lu Feng replied. I take the liberty to ask, how old are you this year? New Year, 27 years old, Lu Feng said. Sikuyi, Hirata Ichiro opened his mouth wide in shock, poured himself a glass of wine, raised the glass and said, Toast to you, I am still a clerk at your age. Cheers, cheers, Lu Feng took a sip from the glass and asked, what is the current attitude of the group's executives towards Ruxin Lab? I want to know. Hirata Ichiro really wanted to sell, but he wouldn't say it stupidly. He hesitated and said, internal opinions are scattered, mainly depends on your sincerity, because there are still many core technologies in the patent rights of Ruxin Laboratory. After saying this, Lu Cheng smiled and couldn't help but say, I am the head of GFN Electronics R/U0026D company. The technical patents of Ruxin Laboratory are all things that have been eliminated by the times, and you will not sell the core technology right. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 722. Liukan commented on the value of the technology patent. The overall value is indeed not high. Ichiro Hirata agrees with Liukan's words in his heart, but he can't nod in agreement. Business negotiation is like this, even if you know that what you have in your hand is worthless, no one will buy it except the one in front of you, and you have to create a hot and aloof appearance for your opponent. Although Lu Feng knew in his heart that apart from Ruxin Lab, they had no other choice. If they wanted to develop communications, they had to buy it, but now he still has to pretend that I don't care, you don't sell it, and some people sell it. On the second floor of this restaurant, in a private room, Watanabe was half kneeling on the tatami, next to two escort maids. The makeup looked quite delicate. Not far away, a few girls were playing minor tunes, and the opposite was Toiki Yoshida, head of Motorola's overseas strategy department, and two other senior executives. The atmosphere at the scene was quite enthusiastic, everyone had a smile on their faces, and they exchanged cups. The so-called geese formation means that each of them performs their own duties. The leading big company sells finished products to the outside world. There are at most 2 supply chain companies below, and they have a very stable supply relationship. The advantage is that the structure of the industrial chain is very rigorous and complete. The disadvantage is that to ensure the competitiveness of leading companies, it is easy to have fixed-line competition among enterprises. Motorola occupies a dominant position. 10 years, 20 years, or even 100 years later, Motorola is still leading the charge. Enterprises are graded, one level over the other. In such an environment, do not start a business, and even the scum will die, so their young people are going to work, and a considerable number of them will work in a company for a lifetime. Roma Semiconductor Group is an important partner of Motorola. At the same time, some products are in a state of competition with each other. Watanabe has experience in the United States, and Yoshida Dong-ai also has experience in the United States. It is no surprise that the two of them sit together. Yoshida-san, your face is radiant recently, it feels like I'm back in my 20s. Watanabe flattered and lit a cigarette and said, this reminds me of my days in Wall Street. The people present burst into laughter when they heard this. The people in the circle didn't know Watanabe. After a little drink, he started to brag about his 10 years on Wall Street, and was proud of it. Watanabe-kun, let's not talk about this today, things at work are so embarrassing, when will the economy return to 10 years ago? Yoshida Dong-ai smoked and sighed, our currency it is still appreciating, which is very unfavorable for exports, and the North American market has declined seriously. In the current situation, we can only open up new markets. I think it is necessary to increase the market investment of the 4 tigers. Yoshida Dong-ai shook his head and said, if the product cannot be recognized by developed countries, what is the meaning of life? Watanabe is quite recognized for these words. In their hearts, being recognized by European and American countries is like a child being praised by adults. Speaking of which, our group recently had a laboratory ready to take action. That idiot from the Overseas Assets Department actually wanted to sell it to a small company called GFN Electronics in mainland China. He had no idea who was in charge of this world. What was the use of dealing with those poor ghosts? Watanabe said more and more angry, he felt that Hirata Ichiro was ruining the company's prospects. Oh, when Yoshida Dong-ai heard the words GFN Electronics, he immediately became interested and asked, Watanabe-san, I want to ask, is this GFN Electronics chairman Lu Feng? I don't know this, what's wrong? Others were also wondering, how did Yoshida Dong-ai know about GFN Electronics? There seems to be something going on here. This person needs to be careful, he's heartbroken, and it's broken. A few months ago, a Nobel business party was held in Dubai, and he used the name of the distinguished Mr. Buffett to defraud. I received it from the branch office. Information, they are about to make efforts in the field of communication. Yoshida Dong-ai understood what was going on after a little thought, smiled slightly, and said to himself, whoosh. The rest of the people were a little puzzled. Yoshida-san, what do you mean, you want to take this breath for Mr. Buffett? That's right, and this is also a great opportunity, He has to understand that some people can't be messed with. Yoshida Toiki looked at Watanabe after saying that. The two have a special affection for Wall Street. In addition, during the economic depression, countless Wall Street capitals swarmed and held many core assets of Fusang. Sometimes the two are father and son relationship. Buffett would never have dreamed that a trivial thing he didn't care about, in faraway Asia, there would be such two people guarding his dignity for him. Lu Feng and Hirata Ichiro had a good chat. It was already 9:30 in the evening. Lu Feng said to him, "As for the price, we follow your quotation, but we also have a price in our heart, and we hope to have a formal negotiation tomorrow. We can happily reach the initial intention." "I also hope that Lu Feng Jun will give more advice and show mercy," Hirata Ichiro said politely. You're welcome, Lu Feng's legs were numb. He stood up and shook hands and said, "See you tomorrow, it's getting late, you should rest early." After a lot of politeness, he left the Japanese food store and got into the car after another polite meal. Lu Cheng looked quite happy in the car and said, "Mr. Lu, this is basically half of it, I see him. That means, we can negotiate a little more tomorrow to make a deal. Don't think it's that simple. People from the relevant firm will come tomorrow. When he sees an offer of 45 million, he will definitely not accept this price." The tug of war has just begun. Lu Feng glanced at the car. The gloomy weather outside the window, muttered, "I hope everything goes well." The next day, Hongshun Law Firm, Yingke Accounting Firm, United Capital Financial Guarantee Branch, Hong Kong Puhua Consulting Company and others arrived one after another. In the morning, Lu Feng held a meeting with them and discussed the legal, financial, asset disposal, knowledge patents and other related issues arising from the acquisition. Because Fuzhou has not joined too many covenants, international treaties, etc., there are fewer restrictions in international law, and there are not too many restrictions in the country's Intellectual Property Protection Act, Core Asset Review, etc. This is a very common international acquisition case. At noon, Hirata Ichiro had just finished the meeting and met with Lu Feng in the afternoon. He had just read some of the materials submitted, and he was not very satisfied with the price of $45 million. This price is considered the lowest price in his mind. It is the first time to formally negotiate, and he must not go out with such a price. As a professional head of the asset department, he has already felt something, but he did not say it at the meeting. After leaving the conference room to prepare for dinner, he took a short lunch break. In the afternoon, the tug of war was about to begin. Just a few steps out of the conference room, Watanabe walked over. "Wait a minute, Minister Hirata." Watanabe looked at him and said, "I have something to tell you." "Is there any work that needs to be handed over?" Hirata Ichiro asked. "It's about Ruxin Laboratory. I have a document in my hand." He raised his hand with a document bag in his hand, and said, "It's about Jiafeng Electronics and the man named Lu Feng. This is my business. I hope you can manage the business department, instead of putting your hands in the asset department." Hirata Ichiro glared at him. For him, this matter was simply an invasion. "If you cause huge losses to the group, will you bear the consequences?" Watanabe stared at him and said, "Just let me know something." Hirata Ichiro sorted out his mood, nodded and said, "How offensive, please come here." The two entered the conference room, and Watanabe threw his things on the table, sat down and crossed his legs and said, "This person, who offended Mr. Buffett a few months ago, used his name to defraud internationally." "What does it have to do with us?" Hirata Ichiro asked. "Offending Mr. Buffett means offending Wall Street to some extent. Do you have an international outlook?" Watanabe educated, "The group's capital turnover is difficult. Who do you need to borrow money from? You sold this laboratory to him, he went back to making pagers, and it was Motorola and Panasonic. You are stupid." Watanabe and Hirata Ichiro are peers, and being scolded by peers like this will make anyone angry. Hirata Ichiro took a look at the information on the table, and said solemnly, I'm only in charge of the asset department, I don't care about the international affairs. Also, Minister Watanabe, you should not stay in this country, you should go to the United States, I can see that you are here, and your thoughts have already gone there. You should recognize what kind of world this is. If you want to do global business, you should find the boss. You will kill the company. I'm going to tell the chairman about this, you just wait and get out. Watanabe she originally thought that after his warning, Hirata Ichiro would be sensible, but he did not expect to be so stubborn. He walked to the door, suddenly turned his head and asked, I heard that you used to like the culture of the Tang dynasty very much. Would you like to send the company's benefits to Iwajiwo? Hirata Ichiro laughed when he heard this conjecture, looked at the absurdity on his face, and asked, then how much did you give to Wall Street? Watanabe she said nothing and went out the door. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Lu Feng and his party number 20 arrived at the headquarters building of Roma Semiconductor Group. Ichiro Hirata came down to greet them in person, greeted each other at the door for a while, and went upstairs into the conference room. As soon as the two sides sat down, Hirata Ichiro began to speak, and the translator beside him said with a strong accent, we warmly welcome Mr. Lu Feng and his party, and this time we will also be straight to the point. The offer has been approved by the board of directors, and a very sincere price has been given, $60 million. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 723. 60 million? Compared to the more than 100 million quoted before, the price has already been cut in half. Lu Feng knew in his heart that there is no real price for such a thing as a technology patent. 1 million is also sold, and 100 million is also sold. Liukin was very puzzled, didn't they report 45 million internally? Seeing his doubts, Lu Feng coughed and gave him a look to tell him not to talk too much. The current offer of 60 million was made on the basis of 45 million. This also shows that they themselves are not very clear about the value of this laboratory. Since you said it so straight to the point, I'll say it directly, Lu Feng said, stretched out his hand to the side, and handed him an evaluation report. This is an international authoritative organization. The evaluation report of Ruxin Laboratory is 23 pages long. Here is a judgment on the value of the technical patents owned by Ruxin Laboratory, you can take a look. Lu Feng handed the report to Hirata Ichiro, and 4 or 5 people on the other side looked at it in turn. Lu Feng continued, according to the assessment, these patents are worth $40 million, and your company's technical advantages in these areas have completely lost as a technology that has been eliminated, so we cannot accept the price of 60 million because it has no market. Hirata Ichiro and the others spent almost half an hour reading the report, and they felt that Lu Feng had come prepared. Mr. Lu Feng, you also said that it is an obsolete technology, but you should know that advanced technology has a broad market. How can it be packaged and sold? A man in his 40s said with a smile, it's like the latest PHS technology, if you give $500 million, we won't sell it. What is PHS technology? Lu Feng asked in a low voice towards Lu Cheng. The short-range coverage call technology can realize a mobile call in an urban area. They are now promoting it on a large scale. You don't see someone taking a smaller brother on the street, that is, Lu Cheng whispered. PHS, Lu Feng thought for a while, according to the time point, it was PHS. We don't have much interest in your technology. We just want to buy some money. $40 million is already a lot, Lu Feng said to them. Hirata Ichiro's face began to wrinkle. He was a little unacceptable at this price. After pondering for a while, he shook his head and said, we can't talk about this price, whether it's 40 million or 45 million, we don't have it. The method is acceptable, the estimation of the value cannot be determined by an asset appraisal. You must know that for these technologies, our family invested $70 million. But you already don't know how many $70 million you have earned back. Lu Feng looked at him and said with a smile, Mr. Hirata, that's not what you said, just like what you said just now, the latest PHS technology, 5 it won't be sold for 100 million yuan, but after many years, is it still worth so much money? When the technologies of GSM/UCMA/LTE are all mature one day, I believe it will be worthless, right? Okay. Yesterday we had a good chat, I can also feel your sincerity, give a suitable price, I still need to report it up. Hirata Ichiro was talking, and someone next to him handed him a note and glanced at it. There are also relevant staff on Lu Feng's side who handed him a note. This is a psychological battle. It depends on who can carry it over, and whoever can't carry it first will have to admit defeat. 50 million, Lu Feng gave a number, and he kept the last 5 million as a backer. Okay, I think we still have a second chance to meet. He stood up with a smile on his face and shook hands with Lu Feng. When leaving the conference room, Lu Feng asked in a low voice towards Hirata Ichiro, I just want to know, where is one of your limits, and I will also tell you our goal this time, we are determined to win. Hirata Ichiro smiled when he heard this, and he was so good at talking. He took the initiative to reveal his details. Since you are determined to win, don't blame me for killing you. However, I've always been a man of courtesy before soldiers, Lu Feng added. What do you mean? Hirata Ichiro was puzzled. That's right, if you can spend money to solve it, try to spend money to solve it. If you can't solve it with money, why bother spending that money? Lu Feng looked at him and said, are you right? Hirata Ichiro didn't know what he wanted to say, and was slightly puzzled. You should make an offer first, you are okay, Lu Feng patted him on the shoulder and said, good devil. The translation girl was stunned as she spoke, and glanced at Hirata Ichiro's side. His translator didn't follow, so she breathed a sigh of relief and said to Hirata Ichiro, you are a good person. Thank you, you may have to wait for a while. There have been a lot of things in the group recently. Ichiro Pingyuan paused and said, you can experience the local characteristics. I've felt it, it's pretty cool, Lu Feng nodded. The two chatted and went upstairs. On the way back, Lu Feng leaned on the back seat and closed his eyes, suddenly opened his eyes and asked Lu Cheng in the front row, if we ignore the patent rights, can you do it? Lu Cheng was asked so suddenly by him, and he was stunned for a while before saying, it's difficult, but with some means, it's not a big problem. Lu Feng frowned. He didn't want to take it apart and take a look. If he could get it that way, why bother to come here? It's not dismantling and imitating. In terms of signal compilation and core processor, we can't do it even if we dismantle it, but we can get some blueprints from the international black market. Lu Cheng hesitated, maybe it will take a little longer. He talked for a longer time, but he was not confident. Lu Feng didn't say anything more. Money is really too tight, 55 million US dollars, the exchange rate fluctuates a little bit, and there is only 50 million left. At such a time barrier, Lu Feng is also very uncomfortable. The PHS technology has already come out. The red eyes are fake. The technology gap between the mainland and foreign countries is close to 2 eras. Even Lu Feng sometimes feels exhausted when he sees such a gap. Jin Tingting sat next to her and said, if they don't sell it, you wouldn't want to grab it, would you? Lu Feng turned his head slowly, opened his eyes and glanced at her lazily, and said, don't be so rude, little girl, borrow it temporarily. Besides, I will tell them in front of them. They can pay them a royalty. Ming grab, Jin Tingting said embarrassedly. In the process of technological development in any country, it is inevitable to pay tribute to the former. Whether it is lax regulation or intentional, the entire process of industrial development is a process of succession, from the United Kingdom, France to the Germany, and then the United States, followed by Fuzhou and other late developing countries. If you look at the industrial history of these countries, you will find that there is a period of crazy accusations, from following to equalizing to surpassing. Of course, this does not include the third brother. Hirata Ichiro made a summary of today's meeting and reported it to the board of directors the next day. Watanabe knew what kind of person Hirata Ichiro was, and had a 2-hour phone call with Yoshida Toichiro in the afternoon. Both of them believe that this is an opportunity to protect Buffett and even Wall Street's face. If they do this and make a splash in the Wall Street Journal, they will be successful. Next time they go to Wall Street, they will definitely be received by senior executives of some financial groups, such as Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs Capital, Tiger Fund, and so on. You don't need to worry about how embarrassed or low level they are outside. After they come back, their status within the group will rise significantly. As long as they enter the high-level circle of Wall Street, they will have to take them with them in the related financing situation of the group headquarters in the future. They even want to become some of Fusang's big companies on Wall Street, and become international financial brokers. Yoshida Toiki told Watanabe on the phone that he must take this matter as a matter of fact, even if it was opposed by the Roma Group Board of Directors. Don't be afraid if you lose your job. As an introducer, let Watanabe come to work directly at Motorola. At the door of the chairman, Watanabe knocked on the door, opened the door and walked in with his head lowered, with a somewhat respectful attitude, and said, "Dear Chairman, I have to report something to you." "Watanabe-kun, please tell me if you have something to say." The chairman stood up and said gently, "Sit down. Ruxin Lab can't be sold to that company. Something big will happen," Watanabe said solemnly. "Oh, why?" Of course, Watanabe can't say. It is for his own name. He thought for a while and said, "This company is very scary. As far as I know, they want to make a pager industry, and they will definitely meet Motorola in the market in the future. If he competes with Motorola, we, as the main supplier, will also have problems." These words of Watanabe are pure nonsense. He didn't even think that the nonsense that he made up later would one day come true. How terrifying it would be. A little-known small company, compared to Motorola? Chairman Sakata laughed. This is probably the funniest joke he has heard in recent days. He sat down and said, "Watanabe-san, we should worry about Samsung, not a GFN Electronics. Let's talk about it. The technology of pager has been eliminated, and now it is the world of telephone and internet. I think we should be careful, and Minister Hirata is very good to that Lu Feng. I think there is some kind of deal between them." Watanabe continued to slander. As the chairman and executive of a large group, such a naive conversation has actually shown something, and Watanabe clearly told Sakata, "Don't ask me why. Anyway, I just don't want the company to sell Ruxin Laboratory to he. Do you love me, or do you love Hirata Ichiro?" Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 724. In any company, one of the problems that can never be avoided is infighting. The bigger the group, the more factions and complicated interpersonal relationships. Even many companies fail because they are busy with infighting. Sakata has been balancing this relationship. Watanabe and Hirata Ichiro are two factions. In Watanabe's eyes, Roma just needs to fall back to Wall Street without a brain. After the big capital enters the game, it will surpass Motorola and go to glory. Hirata Ichiro, on the other hand, pays more attention to the global market, improves the research and development of semiconductor-related industries, provides problem-solving ideas for global brands, and becomes a leader in the second-tier market. These two ideas have been competing against each other for many years. The matter of GFN Electronics is just a small matter, but when the weeds are dry enough and the sparks rub out, it is wildfire. Sakata looked at Watanabe and asked, "What is Watanabe-kun going to do with Ruxin Lab?" "Chairman, I think we need to restart Ruxin Lab, find a few powerful companies to join in, and introduce Wall Street capital at the same time. Those companies will pay, we will provide people, and after developing new technologies, we will promote cooperation, reintroduce investment, and set up a new company. Watanabe she shared his thoughts. It seems that Watanabe can't speak if he leaves Wall Street. Sakata has listened to his plan countless times. It is easy to bring in Wall Street capital, but it is difficult to get them out. Watanabe she is a part-time worker, Sakata is the boss. It is equivalent to Zhu Lidong telling Lu Feng to go to Mr. Feng to invest another money, let him account for more than 80% of the shares. We have money, work hard, work overtime, it will definitely become the number one in Asia. Lu Feng will definitely let Zhu Lidong roll up and leave as soon as possible. Of course, Sakata would not agree with what Watanabe said, but he can also use Watanabe to get involved in this negotiation. To put it bluntly, he just wants to ask for more money. There will be a meeting tomorrow, and we will talk at the meeting, Sakata reassured. Lu Feng returned to the hotel and held a post-mortem meeting with everyone. In the room, Lu Feng asked a few people from the consulting company who arrived today, how much information do you have about the Roma Group? Some conventional information is still available, such as the business status of the company, the structure of the board of directors, production and operation, market share, etc., replied a man in his 30s. Is there any more detailed information? For example, some information about executives. Lu Feng knew that there were many factions in such a large company, and a merger would involve multiple interests, which is why the international mergers and acquisitions have been discussed for several years. The other side showed embarrassment and said, Mr. Lu, we are only a small company, and our main business is management consulting. We have limited data collection for overseas companies. Lu Cheng didn't understand why Lu Feng seemed a little anxious, and said, the vice president didn't say that there was a report. This matter is basically stable. It's not stable at all. Lu Feng breathed a sigh of relief, took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit one. Said, he needs to report to show that the decision is not in his hands. For them, this matter is not a strategic decision that must be made. Think about it, this Ping Yuan Ichiro is so popular among senior management. Jin Tingting was a little puzzled and asked, what do you want to say? It's a very simple matter. Lu Feng glanced at the two of them, how long their brains were, and said solemnly, if I don't deal with him on weekdays, and I don't ask him about things at this time, what is it? When should I find him? First of all, this acquisition is not a big deal, it will have little impact on the group, but it is disgusting. Lu Cheng understood in an instant that it was equivalent to GFN Electronics R/U0026D company. If Lu Feng wanted to promote a strategic investment of several hundred million, the other responsible persons would definitely not dare to object, but the other party would disgust him in some small matters. Jin Tingting still didn't quite understand. She looked at Lu Feng and said, if it's the right thing, everyone should agree. You are still inexperienced in the world, and you will know some things slowly. Lu Feng didn't want to entangle with Jin Tingting on this topic a lot. His intuition told him that this time, it might not be a day or two. If the insiders pay enough attention to this acquisition, Hirata Ichiro will be able to report to the board of directors within an hour. If he can accept this price, he will have the answer and can continue to discuss. At this critical time, the most fearful thing is to have a meeting. As soon as the meeting is over, it is over. Wait, there is no news for 2 days, we can't wait any longer. Lu Feng stood up and said to the crowd, don't be idle these 2 days, collect more information about the executives of the Roma Group, especially around this Hirata Ichiro. Several people in the consulting company looked embarrassed. They just came to make up the number. Lu Feng didn't plan to settle the bill for United Capital. What kind of woman is Su Yorong? A person who can't walk when he sees money, how can he be soft? This is a small consulting company in Xiangjiang. It also sells female star lace news part-time on weekdays. After collecting some regular information on the Roma Group, it sent a few people here, under the euphemistic name of expanding international business. Lu Feng didn't wait for a few people in the consulting company to say anything more, and said to Jin Tingting, "You should go out for a few more days and take a rest. That's all, let's have dinner." The next morning, Jin Tingting went out and walked around a duty-free shop. Some things were still very good. Lu Feng also instructed Lu Cheng to go out more and buy some good things when he saw them. Inspiration. The biggest quarrel this year broke out in the meeting room of the Rome Group headquarters. Watanabe Shi and Hirata Ichiro were red-faced, and everyone couldn't believe it. For the group, the sale of Ruxin Labs is not a big deal. But the two of them seemed to be trying their best. They didn't give a step in the conference room, and they even talked trash to each other. The audience was shocked. For a few hours, nothing was said, and the chairman Sakata did not express his position. Both of them said that it was for the good of the company, but who was for the good of the company, no one knew. In the chairman's office in the afternoon, Sakata called the two of them over, talked for a long time, and finally decided not to sell it, just leave it there. In the evening, Lu Feng received a call from the office of the Rome Group's Overseas Assets Department, and regretfully informed him that they had decided not to sell the ownership of Ruxin Laboratory. Hearing this answer, Lu Feng was stunned on the spot, and he secretly screamed, as expected. "Don't sell it." Jin Tingting was dumbfounded and said, "Isn't the business going back and forth, because the price is too low? We can talk about the low price." "It's not about the low price." Lu Cheng's face was also not good looking, and he sighed, "Maybe something happened. It can't be balanced internally." Lu Feng guessed the outcome, and most of the international acquisitions stopped after talking about it. "That's why." "Then what should we do now?" Jin Tingting looked at Lu Feng and said, "Why don't we go back?" "Go back?" Lu Feng stroked his hair worriedly. This was not the result he wanted. He said solemnly, "Help him solve the problem? How about the consulting company? Call them here." After a while, a few people from the consulting firm came in, looked at Lu Feng and said, "Hello, Mr. Lu. How was the data collection?" Lu Feng asked. The man who took the lead looked embarrassed, and began to rummage from his bag, which was the size of a normal satchel, and he rummaged for several minutes. "What are you looking for?" "Looking for so long?" Lu Cheng wondered. Lu Feng snorted coldly, "Find an excuse. Forgot to bring it?" "Forgot to bring it? Did you hear a sentence when you were in school? It's called if you didn't bring it, you didn't write it." Lu Feng stared at him gloomily and wanted to get angry. After thinking about it, it was useless to scold him. Everyone at the scene has been recruited. I have already received such a reply. I can only pack my things and go back. This trip is a waste of time. Let's talk about it tomorrow." Lu Feng stood up and walked towards his room without saying a word. Back in the room, Lu Feng called Su Yurong directly. An assistant answered the phone and said that she was attending a dinner party and would call back later. The back garden of Su Yurong's villa was brightly lit. The people present were gorgeously dressed and toasted with goblets frequently. The atmosphere was great. This was the daily life of her villa. "President Su, President Lu is looking for you," a woman in her 30s whispered in her ear. "I'm sorry, I have an international call." "Excuse me." Su Yurong smiled slightly, apologized to everyone, and left gracefully. Several rich people at the scene watched her leave and muttered, "After attending the noble business party, everyone has international affairs. Didn't you say that the party was fake?" "I heard it was fake too." Mr. Ho just passed by holding a wine glass and heard this, and came over and said directly, "Fake? Then why didn't you invite you?" "It's just that some people can't eat the grapes and say the grapes are sour." A group of upstarts. A few people present were about to explode when they heard this, because they went to some kind of party, and these people came back as if they were superior. "Bah! Dog thief," someone spat, "it's been 94 years, wait another 3 years, get out of here." "Humph, noble. I'm afraid that even if you go to be a dog, they won't want you. Su Yorong went upstairs and called Lu Feng. Just after the call was connected, Lu Feng's gloomy voice came from the other end of the phone. Tell me how much you paid for the consulting company. I spent 5 million, Su Yorong said without any hesitation. For the 5 million, you swallow 4,900,000, right? Lu Feng said angrily. Can you do some human work? Don't scold me, I think of you every day. I heard you call me just now, and I rushed over, but you scolded me in the face. I'm wronged, Su Yorong unspeakable grievance. Stop doing this, let me tell you, this acquisition went so wrong. I'm not scolding you, Lu Feng said to the phone. I went to Xiangjiang to put your ashes up, believe it or not. I'll tell me now, to be honest, lawyer are offices and accounting firms also parallel imports. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 725. Seeing that Su Yorong couldn't take it anymore, he sighed. You don't plan to give money, you get what you get for every penny. Where can you find so many good ones? Consulting companies charge high prices. This kind of small international mergers and acquisitions don't play much role, and law firms and accounting firms are looking for very professional companies. Don't worry. Are you sure you didn't lie to me? Lu Feng really can't believe her words now. This woman will relax a little bit, and she will make the whole thing for you. You can ask them, they are fierce. You don't spend money, and you want good things. How can you be like this? Su Yorong was also a little annoyed, and muttered, it's like prostituting a beautiful woman, but also people give you money. Do you think you are unreasonable? Instead, Lu Feng was speechless by what she said. All right, now is the critical time. You've dropped the chain for me, Lu Feng said angrily. The bicycle that I picked up is disgusting with the chain, and it's killing me, Su Yorong said aggrieved. It's not enough to take advantage of you. I don't care, you can figure it out for yourself. Get angry, and hang up. The phone was hung up, and she was still aggrieved, making Lu Feng seem to be sorry for her. She always felt uncomfortable about this. Lu Feng thought about it for a while, and came to his senses. Damn, it's United Capital. Cheap, she wronged wool. Su Yorong is probably the only one left to force Lu Feng to this point. Lu Feng wanted to call her to discuss theories, but now is not the time to argue about right and wrong. Lu Feng stood up and went to confirm with two important intermediaries, the accounting firm and the law firm. These two are indeed relatively well-known companies in Xiangjiang. Lu Feng's heart was put into his stomach. After simply taking a bite of dinner, Lu Feng decided to contact Hirata Ichiro again after returning to the room. After a few polite words on the phone, the other party just said that this is a temporary decision by the company's top management, and he will continue to promote this matter. He can take it slow, but Lu Feng can't wait. Originally, Lu Feng wanted to ask directly what internal problems he encountered, but if he directly intervened in other people's group, people wouldn't tell you. After 10 o'clock in the evening, Lu Feng was lying on the bed and couldn't sleep. Even in the current situation, he was at a loss for what to do, but it was absolutely impossible to go back. As the saying goes, everything is difficult at the beginning, difficult in the middle, and difficult at the end, but the most difficult thing is the beginning. The problem facing Lu Feng now is that he doesn't know who is at work inside, and he can't find the root cause of the problem, so he can't solve the problem. It wasn't until after 12 o'clock in the evening that Lu Feng fell into a drowsy sleep. When he woke up at 8 o'clock the next morning, the first thing he did was to call Yui Karai. Now she is the only person who can communicate. At noon, in the hotel restaurant, Yui Karai was sitting opposite Lu Feng. She seemed to be in good spirits. He asked Lu Feng, Jun Lu Feng, How are things going? Is it going well? It's not going well, it's been suspended, Lu Feng sighed, looking a little helpless. Kurai-Yui's face stiffened, and he hurriedly asked, can't we agree on the price? Or are there other reasons? It may be that there is a life issue within the senior management. I want to get in touch with Ichiro Hirata's confidant. Do you know who has a closer relationship with him? Lu Feng pondered for a while and said, it is best to have a comprehensive understanding of his affairs. I'm not too sure. Strictly speaking, I'm his subordinate department. I'll go to the headquarters in the afternoon and ask. Kurai-Yui seemed even more anxious than Lu Feng. Okay, call me if you have news, it's best not to meet in a work way, Lu Feng ordered. After eating, Kurai-Yui left in a hurry. She was even more anxious about this matter than Lu Feng. The acquisition has been stopped, which is good news for Shizuo Watanabe. He told Toiki Yoshida of the news, and the other party was very excited when he heard it. Yoshida Dong-ai collected some public information about Jiafeng Electronics. He learned that Lu Feng really wanted to develop communications this year, but now that the acquisition could not be completed, he was afraid that he had already lost his mind. If you want to go to Wall Street to take credit and do things silently, no one knows what you did. Yoshida Dong-ai asked about the hotel where Lu Feng was staying, and made a phone call. The phone in Lu Feng's room rang, and he picked it up and said, who is it? Mr. Lu, there is a phone call, I want to talk to you, and the other party says he is. The service staff at the front desk was very poor in Chinese. Wait a minute. Lu Feng stood up and called the translation girl opposite the door to answer the phone. Someone called you and asked if you could come in. The other party said that the call was very important and it was about the acquisition of Ruxin Laboratory. The translation girl looked at Lu Feng and said, come in. Yoshida Dong-ai's phone came in and asked directly, Lu Feng from Jiafeng Electronics, right? It's me, who are you? Lu Feng asked. You'll know if you have a chance, isn't the acquisition going well? Do you know what you did wrong? There was a bit of jest on the other end of the phone, as if he was the master who was hiding behind the scenes and controlling everything. I really don't know. If you want to give me some advice, I'm all ears. Lu Feng didn't know where the other party was coming from, so he could only be polite. What did you do in Dubai a few months ago? Whose name are you swindling around and you forget it so quickly? I tell you, Mr. Buffett doesn't want to care about a little guy like you. It doesn't mean no one cares about you. I'll show you a way now. Go to the Wall Street Journal to buy a page, and apologize to him solemnly, Toiki Yoshida said in a gloomy voice. Lu Feng was a little confused when he heard it. He went to Dubai for a walk in the name of an American, but a man from Fuzhang came out to seek justice. What did Buffett ask you to do? Lu Feng was a little unconvinced. He wasn't the only one who did things in the name of Buffett over the years. There were also many local speculators doing this. Do you think you are worthy? Yoshida Dong-ai was a little upset. It's not a humming question of whether I'm worthy or not. What I did didn't even hurt his hair, so you're wearing sacks and filial piety here. You just say who you are in the Roma group, don't play this shit here, Lu Feng said to the translation girl, translate a few more humming. As soon as Yoshida Dong heard this, he was instantly angry, and shouted Baga to the phone, shouting, I'll give you one last chance, if I don't see your apology statement in the Wall Street Journal within 2 days, then you will be in your life for the rest of your life. Don't even think about acquiring Ruxin Lab. After the other party finished speaking, he hung up the phone. The translation girl looked at Lu Feng and said, he's hung up. Go back first, I'll call you if I have something, Lu Feng instructed the translation girl. Lu Feng sat alone in the room and sighed. He never dreamed that Buffett would be taken seriously by others, but someone would hold him back. It's really a goddamn emperor who's not in a hurry, the eunuch is in a hurry. Lu Feng slumped on the sofa and felt that he was wronged. Who would have thought of this? Kurai did his best for Lu Feng, and used all the relationships he could use. At 8 o'clock in the evening, he heard a lot of inside information, including a lot of news about Hirata Ichiro's secretary. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening, the economy was very bad, the unemployment rate was high, and the streets at night were not peaceful. Yui Kurai was still struggling to decide whether to interview Lu Feng or not. Kurai's younger sister arrived today and was sitting at the dining table eating. The heater in the room was a little hotter. She was wearing a pair of shorts. "Sister, it's time to eat." Kurai's husband came out, looked at Kurai's sister, and said, "What's wrong with you? Are you eating?" Kurai expressed the entanglement in her heart and hesitated. "I'd better call." "Calling? It's not good, such a big boss, it's not polite to make a phone call, you can go out." He glanced at Kurai's sister as he spoke. She, who was going to make a phone call, also thought it made sense. She picked up her handbag and put some documents in it, and said to her sister, "Eat well. Walk slowly, wife." Kurai always felt that something was wrong, but he didn't have time to think about it, so he went downstairs and drove straight to the hotel. In the reception room of the hotel, Lu Feng saw Yui Kangjing, shook his hand and said, "It's so late, just talk to me on the phone if you have something to do, there's no need to run." "I'm afraid I'm sorry, I'm really sorry to bother you." Kurai bowed slightly apologetically. "It's alright, please sit down, what's the catch?" Lu Feng stared at her with a little hope in his heart. "Yes." After she finished speaking, she took out a stack of documents from her bag and put it on the table, and said, "Hirata Ichiro's chief secretary, Naoki Lee, is very clear about the company's affairs and is Hirata Ichiro's confidant. This is the photo, have you seen her?" Lu Feng took the photo and glanced at it. He had never seen this person before. Jin Tingting and Lu Cheng, who were on the side, took the photo and looked around, but no one had seen him. "Apart from work, is there any other way to get in touch with this person?" Lu Feng asked. "Does she speak English?" "This is her information. She is 37 years old this year. She has been divorced for several years. Her favorite thing after get off work is to go to bars and custom shops." Kurai handed all the information in her hand to Lu Feng. Lu Feng glanced at it, but it was in Japanese, and then handed it to the translation girl next to him. "I like nightclubs, and sometimes I spend money to find some men I like. My private life is more like a wedding, and I like drinking very much. I like American culture. My biggest wish is to become a citizen of the United States. I'm spreading lace news about the two of them." The translation girl looked at it and said. Hearing these conditions, Lu Cheng's eyes lit up, and he said, "Mr. Lu, use that trick." Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 726. Lu Feng and Jin Tingting were stunned when they heard what he said. Lu Feng wondered, "What trick?" "That's the trick. When you were making children's food, didn't you personally hook up with your competitor's daughter-in-law?" Lu Cheng felt as if he shouldn't have said it, and hurriedly said, "It's okay, it's okay." Jin Tingting's eyes widened, her face full of gossip. She looked at Lu Feng and said, "Have you ever done this before?" "What? Don't talk about half of it. Where were you when I was making children's food?" Lu Feng looked at him speechless, and said angrily, "No wonder you couldn't get promoted in Konka for so many years, you deserve it, make it clear, where did you know that?" "Zhu Lidong told me when I was eating," Lu Cheng said with little confidence. "Zhu Lidong knows shit, he wasn't there at that time. He heard what Zhang Fengxia said." Lu Feng was already a little mad, and said solemnly, "Zhang Fengxia didn't come for a while. Don't talk nonsense with me, saying that Zhang Fengxia listened to my daughter-in-law. Zhang Fengxia heard what Gao Jiwei said, Gao Jiwei heard what Datu and Han Dong said. Mr. Zhu drank too much that day, and told me that this is the historical heritage of the company." Lu Cheng looked at Lu Feng with small eyes, his voice getting weaker and weaker. Don't speak ill of the boss behind your back all day long. Today, it's not a leak, and Zulidong is not a good thing. Stay away from him. Lu Feng looked a little embarrassed, and glanced at Jin Tingting, who was smirking. After clearing his throat, he sent Yui Karai away first. Thank you very much, these news are too important to us. Lu Feng stood up and shook hands with Karai. Yui, it's too late, you go back to rest first, you don't have to run if you have anything. Let's talk on the phone. The two sides had a good meal and sent them downstairs. Before leaving, Karai Yui looked at Lu Feng several times. Of course Lu Feng knew what she was thinking, so he comforted her, saying that as long as the M/U0026 contract is signed, your share will be yours. You can't run away, don't worry. Watching her car go away, Lu Feng turned his head and went back to the hotel to study the document. The content was quite detailed. 2 or 3 pieces of paper were still handwritten, which was obviously what she had inquired about. The translation girl translated all the materials, and Jin Tingting sat there and muttered, "This nice Willie is too much, she actually likes the United States so much. Isn't this normal? People in any country in the world are not sharpening their heads and squeezing there. They would rather have a bed in the United States than a suite in Shenzhen." Lu Feng leaned on the sofa and said, "Do you know what a dream is? What you can't get is always a dream, and the dream is always the best." "Then what do we do next?" Lu Cheng asked. "Even if President Lu seduces this woman with her beauty, what can we get? Does it have any direct relationship with the merger negotiation?" "Who said I was going out to seduce her?" Lu Feng looked at Lu Cheng and said speechlessly, "You just remember this, you just want to see this, don't you?" "No. This is the safest way," Lu Cheng said with a smile. "I have to ask her what resistance Hirata Ichiro encountered when he moved forward with this matter, and help him remove this stumbling block as soon as possible," Lu Feng said solemnly. Lu Cheng looked a little excited, glanced at the time, and said, "Mr. Lu, it's 10:30 in the evening. Is it too late for us to find her now?" "No, why are you so excited?" Lu Feng stared at him and said, "As a researcher, what are you thinking about all day long?" Jin Tingting couldn't help but burst out laughing. All right, go to bed earlier and talk about it tomorrow." Lu Feng sighed and walked towards his room. Nice Willie, the queen of nightclubs, she had a marriage that lasted less than a year, and divorced because of her open nature. She has done many part-time jobs, all of which are indescribable occupations. This is a woman who pursues excitement. In her own words, she chases the sun every day. The men around her change quickly, which also makes her reputation in the company not very good. It has been almost 15 years since she joined the Roma group. Rumors continue, but she still goes her own way. What she is pursuing now is that she hopes that the company will open an office in the United States, and she will take charge. In the nightclub, the music was deafening, and the swaying figure in the middle of the dance floor was indulgent. A very trendy young man leaned beside her with a Mohican. "You are so fragrant," the man whispered in her ear when he approached her. Nice Willie looked at him without much interest, and said, "Your mother was still a little girl when my sister danced, so I don't have time to play with you, let's go." She was a little tired of being here, more than 10 days a month, but there were not many men who came and went to attract her, and she hadn't found a new feeling for several months, plus there was a meeting tomorrow morning. She sat down after drinking a few glasses of wine. I dismissed a few young people and prepared to go back. The man with the Mexican hairstyle who was rejected by him just twisted his body, came over again, and said, "Beautiful, look at me, my body is absolutely superb. My name is Takuhei, and I'm only 20 years old this year." 20 years old, Nice Willie smiled disdainfully, stood up and picked up his bag, took out a 10,000 yen and put it in his pocket, and said in his ear, "Sister is going back first, take this money and buy rice." Tuohei was stunned on the spot, and was a little confused when he took out the money from his pocket. What does it mean to buy rice? The next day, at 9 o'clock in the morning, at the morning meeting of the Roma group, Hirata Ichiro once again proposed to contact GFN Electronics. This is no longer a matter of selling Ruxin Laboratory. A series of related materials of GFN Electronics have been published, which proves that even if GFN Electronics acquired Ruxin Laboratory, it would not damage the company at all, but if it continues to keep it, or if it brings in Wall Street capital and then opens the laboratory, there will be big losses. Risks of. Neither of the two parties could convince the other, so they broke up in an unhappy manner. After leaving the door of the conference room, Nice Willie followed closely behind Hirata Ichiro and asked, "Hirata-san, is there any news about the US office?" "What Hirata-san?" Hirata Ichiro stopped and glared at her. "Sorry, Minister Hirata," Naoki hurriedly changed his words. "You are a graduate of a famous college and have joined the company for more than 10 years. Now you are the secretary of the minister, shameful. Secretary Naishwe, you must be ashamed to move forward. It doesn't mean that if you go to the United States, you will have room for development." Hirata Ichiro educated. Nice Willie bowed slightly in a perfunctory manner, said hi, and then went to work on her own. After 7 o'clock in the evening, Naishweli packed her things and got off work and wanted to go home, but the house was empty. She sometimes felt that the room would suffocate her. She was the only one in the room, sitting there in a daze. Almost all of her friends already have their own families, and it is impossible to accompany her to chat on the phone at any time. Loneliness is the normal state of empty nest women. Only by staying in a noisy nightclub can they feel that the world is not only you, although those noisy and restless ones are so hypocritical and so fake. With a sigh, she was still reluctant to return to her residence awake, so she might as well drink hazy, go back to sleep, and live in a slack life in the city made of reinforced concrete. Perhaps it is also a kind of happiness. Shibuya nightclub is considered to be the most luxurious nightclub in Asia in this era. Before the expansion, it could accommodate 500 or 600 people. At the same time, it is also the favorite of Europeans and Americans, because it has a custom business. According to the information provided by Yui Karai, Nice Willie's favorite nightclub is here. Lu Feng and his party arrived at the door just after night fell. "Is it so luxurious?" Jin Tingting looked at the huge steel shape at the door, with red lights flashing on it, which seemed quite shocking. There were always handsome guys and beauties with heavy makeup coming and going. Occasionally, there were a few rich-looking men, hugging them. "Walked in with the girl?" I asked. "The cost of the card seat is not low. According to the current exchange rate, it is less than 5,000 yuan," Lu Cheng said with some pain. "If she doesn't come, we will still open the card seat every day." "Wait for the rabbit." Lu Feng tidied up his suits. People coming and going around were all staying on Lu Feng's body. His suit and leather shoes didn't look like he was here to play, but more like he came to work. The translation girl couldn't help but said, "Mr. Lu, why don't you change your clothes? No one wears suits here." Today, Lu Feng also specially combed his back and wore a pair of gold wire glasses with no degree. It gave people a sense of gentleness. This outfit was specially designed after studying Nice Willie. Karayui wrote on it that she is a nightclub veteran. She has seen all kinds of things, the only constant is that she likes men who can stimulate her. Since you are looking for excitement, then follow through. She must be tired of the nightclub style, so she will appear in front of her in a suit and leather shoes. "No need, let's go in, don't run out of seats for a while." Lu Feng turned his head and walked inside. A small booth was opened, and some beer and a bottle of foreign wine were delivered. Lu Feng sat there and observed the surroundings. The music was a bit deafening, and shouted to the crowd, "Everyone, pay attention, there are not many people now, she came in, it should be easy to find." 10 minutes later, Nice Willie walked in with a small bag on his shoulders. Tuohei had been standing at the door, Scanning the girl who came in, his eyes lit up when he saw Nice Willy. Beauty, alone, Twohei stepped forward and greeted, "Want to sit at my booth for a while?" Nice Willy turned her head and saw his mohawk's hairstyle. She couldn't help laughing and said, "You still have to stare at me. Maybe this is fate. I didn't expect it to be you. Please come here." Twohei pointed to the booth not far away and said, "I think you have a special smell that is very charming." Jin Tingting's eyes accidentally caught sight of the other side, and she recognized it in an instant under the slightly dim light, and shouted, "She's here, she's here." Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 727. Everyone followed her gaze and saw Nice Willy. Jin Tingting looked back at Lu Feng, her expression full of anticipation. She excitedly patted Lu Feng on the shoulder and said, "Come on, soak her." "Why are you so excited?" To be honest, Lu Feng is still a little embarrassed. He has never jumped on D in his 2 lives. Even if he is thick-skinned when dealing with things, he is really thin-skinned in this regard. "Wait, she won't be able to run when she comes." Lu Feng raised his wine glass and said to the crowd, "Come on, let's drink ours first." There are already many people on the dance floor. On both sides of the dance floor are 6 dance pillars more than 1 meter high. In the middle is a steel pipe with lights on it, mainly the venue for the dance show. An hour later, there were more people at the scene. There were all kinds of old girls and young girls, and the people were dazzled. Nice Willy couldn't bear the harassment of Twohei. After leaving his handbag, he moved towards the center of the dance floor. "Go. Sister, don't you like me?" He chased Nice Willy and asked, "What do you like?" "I like showy ones." Nice Willy spoke and entered the dance floor, and began to shake his body to the music, and other men immediately came over. Lu Cheng and Jin Tingting looked at each other, and the 2 of them couldn't wait. "Mr. Lu, they're on the dance floor, let's go." "Let's go," Jin Tingting said as if ready to watch the excitement. "Come on." Lu Feng turned his head to look at the dance floor, took a deep breath, stood up abruptly, and walked towards the dance floor. Jin Tingting exclaimed excitedly, "Get up and dance to us." Lu Feng walked into the dance floor, looking a little helpless. He slowly nodded his head to the music. Not far away, there was a little girl with average appearance, with long hair, shaking her head like crazy, looking at Lu Feng. Scalp tingling. His hands were swaying at will, and people around him had noticed him, and the eyes looking at him were very strange. He was standing here wearing a formal suit, and he didn't seem to be able to jump, and the word rational was written on his face. Lu Feng felt that he was standing in a pile of lunatics. Just a few minutes after he came in, he didn't know how many people stepped on his feet, and slowly approached Nice Willy. Nice Willy twisted her waist and saw Lu Feng for the first time. He was so eye-catching on the dance floor. She couldn't help laughing when she saw it. This person is so weird, like he was working in the company a second ago. It's like being teleported here in the next second. "Hello," standing there, Lu Feng kept nodding to the music, and said to her in English, "Do you know how to speak music?" Nice Willy stared at Lu Feng and smiled, and asked, "Are you here to work? Or do you want to pretend to be a good man in a nightclub?" "My name is Lu Feng." Lu Feng stood beside her and introduced. "You can call it whatever you like. You wouldn't want to get me a business card, would you?" Nice Willy rolled his eyes. Appears to be speechless. Twohei had seen Lu Feng for a long time, and he jumped over here shaking his head. The mohawk hair that stood up on his head did not know how much hairspray was sprayed, as if his head had long horns, and he went to the top of Lu Feng's chest. After a while, Lu Feng was in pain. "Yahoo!" With a strange cry, Twohei stood between the 2 of them, but he pouted his buttocks and wriggled, pushing Lu Feng a few steps back, his whole body showing his teeth and claws like a courting gorilla. "If you don't know how to dance, then go back to work overtime." Nice Willy looked at Lu Feng and said with a smile, Did someone tell you that women in nightclubs are fun? I'm the hottest guy in this store. Yahoo! Another strange cry. Takukai jumped and hugged Nice Willie's waist. Lu Feng stood there and was knocked around, took a deep breath and walked out of the dance floor, returned to the booth and poured a glass of beer, picked it up and drank it. What's wrong? Lu Cheng asked, can't you figure it out? Failed to dance. Jin Tingting sat on the armrest of the sofa and said, I kept looking at you just now, you are too stiff, jumping, look at those people showing their teeth and claws, you stand there to make people laugh. Then why do you say jumping? Lu Feng said angrily, you're just staring at me and making a fool of yourself, right? Where is it? I turned around and said a few words to President Lu. Jin Tingting pointed with a wicked smile on her face, you have to let go, you can't be rude, you know. Then go and show me, Lu Feng said angrily, just stand here and dance, the three of us appreciate it. Jin Tingting waved her hands again and again, she didn't lose this person. Lu Cheng knew that Lu Feng just couldn't take that step. He glanced at the translation girl and asked, can you? No, no, said the translation girl, holding a glass of pure white water. How to proceed now? Lu Cheng felt that he needed to stimulate Lu Feng a little bit. What he cared about the most, he took whatever stimulation he gave and coughed, Mr. Lu, if you can't dance, forget about it. The big deal is not to buy Ruxin Laboratory. In the industry, if you don't do it, I don't think you have much money. What nonsense, Lu Feng shouted, staring at him. Don't have any money? That's a lot of humming money. Isn't it just a joke? It's a big deal. It's like someone who can't show off. Lu Feng gulped down the glass of beer in front of him, stood up and walked towards the dance pillar more than 1 meter high, unbuttoning his suit jacket with one hand as he walked. Move, hit, hit. Move, hit, hit. Now the music is in full swing. Lu Feng walked up to the 1 meter high dance pillar step by step. Many people below noticed the young man in a suit and leather shoes. They raised their heads and looked at him. When the show. Lu Feng stepped up, grabbed the steel pipe with both hands, and then leaned against his back. He opened the suit jacket with both hands, raised his hips, and reached out to unbutton the first button of the white shirt. The instant combination of business school and enchanting sluts made everyone feel a little unbearable and screamed. What? Jin Tingting kept clapping her hands, standing there laughing wildly. Lu Feng drooped his suit jacket, turned his back to the dance floor, his posture twisted to the music, and turned his head sharply, biting his lower lip, squinting slightly, staring at Nice Willie, comparing his fingers to a jerk. Pointed at his own eyes, and then pointed at Nice Willie's eyes. He is so horny. Standing in the center of the dance floor, Nice Willie raised his head slightly and looked at the suit, with a sullen look in his seriousness, and a bit of business in his sullen look. At this moment, his heart that had been silent for a long time, cheered again. Oops. Oops, Lu Cheng covered his face with his hands and couldn't help but laugh. Anyone who knew Lu Feng couldn't bear this scene. Jin Tingting couldn't straighten her waist with laughter. She slumped on the deck and said, I really want to, haha, take a picture of him. The translation girl sat there with a glass of water and didn't know what to say. How could such a big boss be able to do such a thing? The audience surrounded Lu Feng, screaming of all kinds. Lu Feng jumped even more violently with the alcohol. 3 buttons of his shirt were unbuttoned, his snow-white shoulders were exposed, and the jacket in his hand was violently he threw it out towards the crowd, and the scene was constantly scrambling, but the suit jacket was accurately placed on Nice Willie's head. At that moment, Nice Willie took a deep breath and almost went out of his body. Half an hour later, a group of girls dressed in cool clothes came out. The dance show started. Lu Feng got off the stage, buttoned the buttons one by one, walked to Nice Willie and said, I can return the coat to me. Me. The smell on it is so charming. Nice Willie looked at the jacket in his hand and said, Can you give me a souvenir? Of course, but I'm cold and need you to give me some warmth, Lu Feng said, reaching out and hugging her. Is it warmer? Nice Willie's breathing was a little heavy, and he raised his head and asked, would you like to change the place? Where did you say? The bathroom. Go to the car. Okay, Lu Feng pulled her out of the bar, the two of them leaned against each other, their hands restless as they walked, and a few minutes later, they sat in a taxi. Don't you have a car? Lu Feng was speechless, because he felt that this woman wanted to find some excitement here. I didn't drive over, go to my house. Very soon Nice Willie stared at Lu Feng, her eyes blurred, and asked, you don't speak Japanese? Japanese? Of course, I believe that all men and women in the world can speak Japanese, Lu Feng said with a smile. Nice Willie was stunned for a moment, then reacted excitedly, then go to my house to speak Japanese. No problem. In the nightclub, Tuohei sat on the booth a little disappointed. He didn't know where he was, but he couldn't get to Nice Willie. Lu Cheng glanced at the time and said to the two of them, let's go back, it's boring to stay here, there are so many people, if something happens, it's hard to deal with it when you're abroad, everything that should be arranged now is arranged, and then it's up to President Lu's performance. Jin Tingting stood up and said, he doesn't really mean that, right? I read the information, and that girl is pretty bad. It's not looking for a daughter-in-law, men don't care, you still want a lot, do it well, let's go. Lu Cheng packed up his things, took the two out of the nightclub, and took the car back to the hotel. In a high-end apartment, as soon as he entered the door, Nice Willie threw his high heels out and threw himself on Lu Feng. What are you doing? Lu Feng asked, putting his arms around her. I don't want to know who you are, and you don't have to ask me who I am. Nice Willie kissed him on the cheek and said, come on, conquer me. Lu Feng put her on the bed, the house was a mess, things were littered everywhere, underwear was everywhere, he stared at her and said, I don't like this kind of person, let's get to know him briefly first. My name is Lu Feng, American, 27 this year. I'm 37, Nice Willie, okay, he stared at Lu Feng and said, get excited. Lu Feng walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, reached out and opened the curtains, the night outside was so beautiful. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 728. After a long battle, both sides were exhausted. After washing up, Lu Feng sat on the single sofa smoking a cigarette. Nice Willie seemed to have calmed down a lot. Look at the landing peak. How is it? Lu Feng stared at her and asked. Fantastic, she complimented. Where do you work? Lu Feng asked as if chatting, aren't you married? Is it necessary to talk about this? Nice Willie threw the towel aside, lit a cigarette for himself, and said, at dawn tomorrow, everything has nothing to do with you. Just a casual chat. Your English is so good, why don't you go to the United States to develop? Lu Feng asked for a topic that she was absolutely interested in. Nice Willie seemed quite helpless, smoking a cigarette. I want to go too, but the company didn't send me there. I told my boss today and I was scolded. Then your boss is really not very good. I think he should be the kind of middle-aged man with a big belly and self-willedness. Lu Feng continued to dig deeper along this topic. That's not true, he's not fat, he's tall and thin, he just has an opinion on me. He said last time, let me get out of the way and go mess with Minister Watanabe. There's something wrong with his philosophy. Nice Willie snorted. Smoke, quite depressing. Lu Feng raised his brows and asked, isn't Minister Watanabe dealing with him? Is it the conflict of interest department? This kind of thing still needs to be handled well. No, you don't know, our group is relatively large, Minister Watanabe thinks that we should move closer to Wall Street, and my boss thinks that we should develop globally. I have quarreled many times, and I don't think I have the chance to go to the United States in my life. Nice Willie talked about the sad things, and sighed, "Don't talk about it." Lu Feng still wasn't sure if this Minister Watanabe was the culprit who hindered the acquisition. He stood up and sat next to her, put his arm around her shoulder and comforted, "It's all right, it really doesn't work, I can take you there, go. Has this Watanabe quarreled with your boss recently?" Lu Feng's words are still very articulate. First, he comforted her and gave Tianzhao to make her feel happy, and then asked about things. In order to make Lu Feng take her away firmly, she must know everything. "I've been arguing before, but recently it's even more noisy because of GFN Electronics." Nice Willie hurriedly said, "Can you take me there? I want to naturalize. What should I do after I go to work?" "Naturalization is easy. I have a buddy who is not married yet. If you marry him, you will be naturalized. You don't have to worry about work. Come to my company." Lu Feng hugged her hard and said with a smile, "Be my secretary." "Really?" Nice Willie's eyes lit up, "What does your company do?" Lu Feng took a sip on her face and boasted, "Global Strategic Investment, the company is on Wall Street, mainly for futures trading." Nice Willie was stunned. She didn't expect Lu Feng to be so rich. She stared at him for a while. Although he also thinks that he may be bragging, he even has this kind of temperament and conversation that ordinary people have. As everyone knows, Lu Feng has relied on his temperament and conversation all the way. She deliberately chatted about crude oil futures for a while. Lu Feng talked freely, and even had a very good prediction of the global oil trading trend. Those words in his mouth were all professional terms. Nice Willie is an old Jianghu. He has seen everyone before, so he is still a little suspicious, but his vigilance is not that strong. The two chatted for more than an hour, and said a lot of things inside the company. It was very late. Nice Willie fell asleep. Lu Feng was lying on the bed and couldn't sleep, and he was scolding secretly in his heart, "Sure enough, the two devils are always more hated than the devils. This Watanabe, she is simply a pit in his head. Now that he knows his opponent, everything will be easy to handle." Lu Feng has a way to make him unable to continue. The next day, after 6 o'clock in the morning, it was just dawn. Lu Feng put on his clothes and looked at Nice Willie, who was still sleeping. He opened the door and left. Yoshida Dong Ai has been waiting for Lu Feng's apology. As long as Lu Feng publishes the first apology, he will force Lu Feng to send a second letter, and he will be mentioned in the second letter. If Buffett ignores him, then he himself went to the Wall Street Journal to publish a so-called interview, forcing Buffett to call himself. As long as the public opinion rises, he can take advantage of the situation to break into some dinners. His abacus is very clear. It's a pity that he can never wait for Lu Feng's first apology. After 9 o'clock in the morning, Yoshida Dong Ai called again. This time, the front desk was directly transferred to the translation girl's room. After the translation girl received the call, she knew that Lu Feng was not there, so she had to go to Jin Ting Ting. "What time is it?" "It's time to come back." "I'll take a look." Jin Ting Ting walked to the door of Lu Feng's room and rang the doorbell. Lu Feng was awakened by the doorbell, got up from the bed, opened the door and asked, "Is something wrong? Are you back?" "When did you come back?" Jin Ting Ting asked in surprise. "I'll be back in the morning to catch up." Lu Feng yawned and said, "Make me a soup for noon." "What's the matter with you two?" "That person called again that day, urging you to publish an apology," said the translation girl. Lu Feng went to her room and waited for the phone to call again. Jin Ting Ting stood there looking at him tired and said, "I didn't rest last night." "Okay. Do you think it's good to rest?" Lu Feng rolled her eyes at her and said, "What do you want to hear?" "Details. If you want to see the details, buy a plate and watch it yourself." "You rascal. It's not easy for me. I worry about the company, Ah. Lu Feng sighed and said, the boss is not so easy to be. You're really, not too dirty. The translation girl felt that it was the most embarrassing moment for her to grow so big. Fortunately, the phone rang in time. She picked up the phone and said a few words, and said to Lu Feng, it's him. Mr. Watanabe, I didn't recruit you, I didn't provoke you, so what are you doing with me? Lu Feng sat on the chair and said, since you insist on getting a job, then I have to play with you. After hearing this, Yoshida Dong I shouted, I'm not Watanabe, I'll give you the last few hours, if you don't do it, don't even think about acquiring Ruxin Labs in this life. Not Watanabe? Then you belong to Watanabe, Lu Feng wondered. I'm not under Watanabe either, you'd better do it obediently, I'm not joking with you. Yoshida Toiki felt as if he had heard something, and shouted, I'm not afraid to tell you, I am Yoshida Toiki, people you can't mess with, understand? Assholes. Male Gobe, Lu Feng stood up angrily, grabbed his hair with his hands and said frantically, who did I offend? What kind of bullshit did I run out of? Tell me, I humming offended you. Well. You're barking here with your own dog food just because of that stupid thing. I'll give you one last warning, you can do it yourself. Yoshida Toiki hung up the phone. Lu Feng sat down and felt helpless. He took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit one. The room was very quiet. The little translator was too scared to speak. Jin Ting Ting patted him on the shoulder and said, it feels like the whole world is targeting you. It's useless to solve it bit by bit. Going crazy is the most useless. Lu Feng stood up and walked towards his house, saying, I'll take a nap and talk about it in the afternoon. At 2:30 in the afternoon, lunch was delivered to the room. Lu Feng took a simple bite. Lu Cheng sat aside and watched Lu Feng remember the dance last night. He couldn't help but laugh. You said you are sitting here talking, what are you doing? Lu Feng frowned at him and said, Watanabe she, check it out as soon as possible, and Yoshida Toiki. Watanabe she is better to check. After all, he is an executive of the Roma Group. Who knows where Yoshida Toiki is? Lyokan said worriedly. Check Watanabe Ji first, and then follow Watanabe Ji to check Yoshida Dong II. Lu Feng felt that he was not suitable for this job, so he handed over the matter to a few members of the work team. After dinner, a group of people gathered together for a brief meeting to analyze the current situation. Lu Feng decided to call Hirata Ichiro to test his reaction first. After the call was connected, Hirata Ichiro said, who is the Overseas Assets and Investment Department? It's me, Lu Feng from GFN Electronics. Lu Feng said towards him. Mr. Lu? Have you gone back? I'm really sorry for the acquisition this time, Hirata Ichiro said apologetically. I didn't go back. I'm still in Kyoto. I still think we can talk about Ruxin Lab. Recently, I learned that there seems to be a disagreement between you two. If I resolve this disagreement for you, can the negotiation proceed? Lu Feng asked. You haven't left yet. Hirata Ichiro was very surprised, and he was even more surprised that Lu Feng actually found something, which was not what he told him, and hurriedly said, Mr. Lu Feng, this matter has nothing to do with me, I didn't tell you any information, and I have nothing to do with the disunity within the group. Our company has always advocated peace, friendship, and mutual assistance. Don't worry, this has nothing to do with you. If I push Ruxin Lab, what do you mean? Lu Feng asked in a different way. Please increase your efforts, Hirata Ichiro said very solemnly. He couldn't provide any information to Lu Feng. Once the company's internal suppression was found, not only would he lose his job, but no company would dare to use it again. Okay, I understand, Lu Feng politely said, trying to hear some news about Watanabe Shi or Yoshida Toiki from his mouth, but unfortunately the other party didn't say anything at all. Ichiro Hirata's current attitude is that if Lu Feng can make Shid Watanabe uncomfortable, he will be very comfortable. It really doesn't matter if Ruxin Lab sells it or not. After arguing for so long at the meeting, it's not for Lu Feng's sake. The quarrel was purely due to the two of them scoffing at each other. If Lu Feng can do it, he is willing to follow the trend. If he can't do it, don't try to drag him into the water. This is a very smart strategy, not helping, not knowing, and not being responsible. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 729. Nice Willie was a little stunned when she sat in the office. Everything last night was like a dream of Nank. When she woke up from the dream, everything disappeared. From the morning to now, she has been a little lost, and she can't raise her emotions. She took a deep breath to cheer herself up. Start to get busy. What an ape, she has worked in the Roma group for more than 20 years. He can be regarded as a veteran in the company. It is not difficult to find out some news about him. In less than half a day, he bought it from a local consulting company. To very detailed information. It is rare that Yoshida Deng II is not easy to inquire about. He only knows a name, and there is no such person at the top of the Roma group, so Lu Feng can only focus his attention on what nabe she again. Whether it was before or now, the information of the executives of large companies is the focus of the collection of major consulting companies. The more important the executives are, the more expensive it is to sell a copy of the background information. After all, the bosses of large companies do not want to find them. An incompetent person can cause heavy losses to the company, or have major problems. After dinner, Lu Feng opened the document, glanced at it and handed it to the translation girl, and said, "Tell me about it." "Why is it in Japanese?" Jin Tingting wondered. "This service is not very good." "Just do it, don't worry about it so much at this time," Lu Cheng muttered. The translation girl watched for a while, and then concluded, "He is a top student at MIT, and has worked in Wall Street for 10 years. He has worked as an investment consultant, fund manager secretary, strategic investor, and in an insurance company. Worked as an executive director, a person with comprehensive business ability, returned to China in the early 1970s for development, and was hired by Roma Semiconductor Group at a high price. This is a very good resume. He graduated from a prestigious school, and has served as the head of the second-level department in 2 of the top 10 financial companies in the world. He has participated in insurance and bond issuance, and has a wide range of middle-level contacts on Wall Street. What an ape, she has developed so well that he doesn't need to come back at all, but he still came back, and it has nothing to do with loving the country or not. Over the years, the outside world has been suspicious of what he has done, or offended someone, and he can't stay there any longer. One of the most widely spread rumors was that he had developed very rapidly back then. In addition, he was young, and he got involved with the lover of William Weimel, the CEO of Goldman Sachs Investment Bank. After the incident, he couldn't get along and came back. The reason why this version is widely spread is that in that year, Vermeer fell out with his little lover and eventually resigned, and Shi Watanabe was a little handsome when he was young. According to the data, this person has 4 lovers now. Private life is more chaotic. The translation girl saw the last page and said, "There are some lace rumors in the back, so don't read it, it's written in great detail." She looked at Lu Feng with some embarrassment. "You don't need to read it, this is probably a bonus," Lu Feng pondered while smoking a cigarette. "It's too messy, there are so many women." Jin Tingting sighed, "Men get bad when they have money." "That's not what it says." Lu Cheng said from the side, "It's not that they get bad when they have money, but how bad can a man without money be?" Lu Feng didn't want to listen to the two of them debating this matter, and asked, "Does the company here have high moral requirements?" "Are you talking about real morality or superficial goods?" Lu Cheng asked. "For example, lifestyle issues or something," Lu Feng muttered a little unconfidently. Everyone was silent. If he was a public figure, Of course it would be over if such a thing was exposed. The key point was that he was just a company executive. If you want to do this, I think it's very difficult. Even if it's a riot, it doesn't harm the company's interests. It's just a private matter. At most, it's a press conference and bow and apology. Translation girl gives the answer. Lu Fengzhou smoked continuously. In a foreign country, he has no power here at all, like a drowning person, with no focus at all. There was some silence in the room, and everyone was out of action. Not to mention Jin Tingting, even Lu Cheng thought that this trip was really a waste of time, and communication might have to be put on hold for a while. He went back to buy some blueprints through the black market and went back to study. It also has to be a year, or buy a license. Let's rest first. Lu Feng stood up, a little irritable, and waved his hands towards the crowd. I'll be quiet for a while. After 10 o'clock in the evening, Lu Feng was still at a loss. He took a shower and lay on the bed. In a daze, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and thought of a good solution. Putting on the nightgown, Lu Feng called the translation girl, Lu Cheng, and Jin Tingting over. Everyone looked sleepy, and Jin Tingting couldn't even open her eyes, so she yawned. Boss, what's the matter? I'll say no tomorrow, I'm so sleepy. I suddenly have an idea. You can listen to it and see if you can, especially you. We don't know much about this. Lu Feng emphasized to the translation girl and said, his personal life is not very good. We can find some that kind of actresses, and then randomly meet him, and tell him that we are recruiting that kind of movie male protagonists. We think he is very suitable, and we will compensate him after we are done. Nutrition. The translation girl understood, but Jin Tingting and Lu Cheng were confused and asked, what kind of movie? What kind of actor? It's the kind of film with a simple plot, few characters, a single line, and a low production cost. Lu Feng winked at the two of them and said, do you understand? Lu Cheng was a married person, and he reacted instantly, nodding his head to show that he knew. What? What are you talking about? What movie? Jin Tingting asked curiously. I'll take a look at it. It's mysterious. Be busy with business first, and then have time to look at it later, Lu Feng said casually. In that case, it won't affect him too much. As long as it's off work, it's a private space, the translation girl reminded. It won't have a fatal blow to him. Look, you don't understand. We can tell him that the simulation is the kind of secretary and boss in the office, right? Lu Feng raised his eyebrows and said, then use the perspective of candid photography to make a few photos, not enough, or spread the recording, and the lines contain a little bit of interest transmission between the company and the company. The translator girl and Lu Cheng stared at Lu Feng in a stunned manner. They felt that Lu Feng really understood. Although Jin Tingting didn't know what movie it was just now, Lu Feng described it like this, and she knew what movie it was even if she was an idiot. You are very familiar with this industry, Jin Tingting said, staring at Lu Feng. It can be regarded as a dream of adolescence. Anyone who has a dream is amazing. In this world, there are not only no books to read for nothing, but also no movies to watch for nothing, Lu Feng said with a serious tone. However, we can't come forward, we must not do this. To get involved, we need someone who understands Japanese, has little to do with us, but is reliable. Lu Cheng stared at the translation girl very honestly. Mr. Lu, I'm not very good. I'm here to be a translator. If this kind of thing gets out, it's not very pleasant. I'm not married yet. The translation girl hurriedly waved her hand to refuse. What are you kidding? I took the translation money myself to do this kind of thing. I didn't tell you to go, but we don't know Japanese. You can help find someone. That person just needs to contact a photographer, set up an office scene, and find an actress. The fee is a little more. After all, it's such a thing, 30,000 to 50,000 yuan will do, Lu Feng said to her. It's hard work for you. When I go back and settle the bill for you, I'll give you more. If it's 30,000 to 50,000 yen, it may not be easy to find because it's in a hurry, the translation girl said. Dollars. The embarrassed look on the translation girl's face subsided, and she said to Lu Feng, Mr. Lu, leave this matter to me, and leave it to outsiders. If it fails, it will be troublesome, and now there is no room for failure. Very well, you have done things beautifully. After you go back, if you want to go to work at GFN Electronics, I will open the back door for you. Lu Feng valued her very much. Don't worry, I will contact you early tomorrow morning, and strive to have all the directors and actresses in place tomorrow. Okay, it's not early, everyone rest early, Lu Feng said to everyone, go back to sleep. It was already late at night. Yoshida Toiki was sitting on the tatami, looking at Watanabe opposite. He was already drinking a little too much, scolding people. It's that Lu Feng, who is determined not to sell it to him. Give me the opportunity to kill him. Ji Tiandong shouted with a big tongue, a small company dares to challenge me? Remember this company. The company, any acquisitions in the future will be blocked. Watanabe laughed when he looked at his frantic appearance, stretched out his arms around the girl next to him, used it to support his body that was about to lie down, and said, don't worry, Yoshida-san, as long as he wants to make his mark in the world, we have a chance. With their status in the international communications industry, they are indeed qualified to say such words. As long as they speak in various associations, the international community is still very interested in obstructing the rise of the mainland region. It's not how much they hate Lu Feng, it's just that they lost an opportunity to show their respect to developed countries. Lu Feng cooperated and brought back face for Master BA. The two of them got credit, and if they were happy, they might be happy with Jiafeng. What about the development of electronics? The next day, the little translation girl went to the human resources company early in the morning, spent some money, and found the director in less than 2 hours. It was a bald man in his 30s who looked a bit wretched. The two sides signed a labor contract, and the actress will be found by him, who will meet this afternoon.